I will call the semi-monthly meeting of the Coastal Resources Management Council to order. Today is Tuesday, January 25, 2022. The meeting is being held via the Zoom platform per allowance of State of Rhode Island Governor McKee's executive order. I am going to let the record reflect. I'm going to do an attendance of council members and then just ask that the record reflect all staff members that are present by way of the minutes. And obviously when you're called upon, the record will reflect that you're here as well. So I'm going to do a council roll call. Donald Gomez.
Present.
Ron Gagnon.
Present.
Patricia Reynolds.
Present.
Joy Montanaro.
Present.
Lindsay McGovern.
Present.
And I, Ray Coyer, am present. As I indicated, we do have several staff members as well as our legal counsel. And Ryan, since this is being done via a Zoom platform, I'd ask that you do your introduction as you traditionally do, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
This is the Rhode Island Coastal Resources Management Council virtual semi-monthly meeting, January 25th, 2022. Conductance in accordance with Executive Order 22-01. If you're having problems with the computer audio, please use the call-in numbers for this meeting. This meeting number and phone numbers will be posted in the chat box. A notice to meeting participants and attendees, please be advised, this is an online meeting, including all audio, video, and names and comments visible in the chat box are being recorded. All members of the public who wish to comment during these proceedings must correctly identify themselves before proceeding. Council members, applicants, and CRMC staff, please keep your video on. Do not use phone and computer audio at the same time. Raise your hand or use the raise hand button to be recognized by the chair. Identify yourself by first and last name. Members of the public, please keep your video off. Mute your microphone when not speaking. Use the raise hand function to be recognized by the chair. Wait to be recognized by the chair and unmuted by the moderator to speak. Identify yourself by first and last name. For those on the phone, please press *9 to use the raise hand function. When recognized, identify yourself by first and last name. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. First matter on our agenda will be approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, that meeting being held January 11, 2022. And entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Mr. Gagnon has moved approval. Is there a second?
Reynolds, seconds.
Ms. Reynolds has seconded. So a motion is made and seconded to accept the minutes of the January 11 meeting. I'll now poll the council as to the vote. Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon.
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
Ms. Montanaro.
Aye.
Ms. McGovern.
Aye.
And I too, Raymond Coyer, vote aye. So the meeting minutes have been approved. Subcommittee reports.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Jim Boyd.
Mr. Chairman, council members, the council's Rights of Way Subcommittee met at 5:30 this evening, immediately preceding this semi-monthly meeting of the council. The subcommittee heard reports from CRMC Executive Director Jeffrey Willis and CRMC Legal Counsel Anthony DeSisto. And the subcommittee took action on two matters. The subcommittee voted to ask CRMC staff to make arrangements with the town of Portsmouth so that a virtual Zoom meeting can be held with the town of Portsmouth and the subcommittee to hear public testimony and to take facts on 5 separate rights of ways being proposed in the town of Portsmouth. The subcommittee also voted to ask legal counsel to continue further research necessary on the Mumford Road right-of-way in Narragansett so that a public hearing can be held in Narragansett or via Zoom whenever that happens, and any executive order that may or may not continue online Zoom meetings. And legal counsel also presented an update on continuing research of legal memoranda and other facts and data revolving around the Spring Street extension in Westerly and a rights of way in Buttonwoods in Warwick. And so that ends the subcommittee report. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
You're welcome.
Staff reports, Mr. Willis, unless there's any questions of Mr. Boyd, I'm sorry. Seeing none, Mr. Willis, staff reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of items today. We brought in Peter O'Rourke, who is one of our senior environmental scientists, to the meeting. He actually was the staff that reviewed one of the items on your agenda tonight. Amy, however, I think will be presenting on his behalf, but I just wanted to introduce Peter to you all. And two other matters. Jim mentioned that the Rights of Way subcommittee introduced the upgraded, in my opinion, revised Arcgis Rights of Way interactive map. Please, when you get a chance, go to the Rights of Way page on our website and fool around with it. It's a wonderful new tool, very easy to use, updated photographs, and every single legal documentation on how those rights of ways were designated by the council over these many years are also included on that web page. So it's a great resource for us all in the public to do any rights of way research. So please take a look at that when you can. And then just lastly, on the wind farm front, which is something that we talk about pretty much every meeting, we issued today, and this is Jim's and his team's lead on this, the Sunrise Wind, what's called 3-month letter. We are required within 90 days of having our federal consistency review clock begin for any of these offshore wind projects. Within that first 90 days, we have to issue a letter detailing what information is yet to be supplied to us for review so that we can continue our review under the consistency review process. If we do not issue this letter, the project is presumed consistent with the program. So it's a very important threshold date that we have met for every wind farm, offshore wind farm that we have to date. That letter went out today. You should all, if you did not receive an email copy of it, you will tomorrow from staff. But you will see that there are still some outstanding issues that we are asking the Sunrise team, which is an Ørsted project, to supply, primarily more detailed information on the glacial moraines that exist in their lease area, an alternative layout based on where those glacial moraines are and the turbine positions are proposed to be. We are also asking for a socioeconomic impact of the fisheries, both commercial and recreational, that exist within the lease area, and also to revise their fishery management plan to better address resources that we feel they should, primarily scallops, which are being fished out there, but the fishery management plan doesn't really address. So there's a couple other issues within that fishery management plan that we're asking them to address, but I just want to put that on the record that the 3-month letter went out. It lays out the issues to the Sunrise team, what additional information is needed for us to continue our review. And we are working with the Ørsted team as well as our Fishery Advisory Board on making sure that this particular project and any offshore wind project is consistent with Rhode Island's coastal program. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any questions of Jeff by any council members? Seeing none, I will now move on to our formal agenda. First one is administrative application before the full council for final decision. It's 2021-09-015 Windwood Associates LLC. Its application to construct and maintain a 3-bedroom, single-family dwelling with OWTS and stormwater management. Citing of the OWTS requires greater than 50% variance to buffer zone. It's located at plat 137, comma, lot 41, semicolon, 3 Setting Sun Drive, Westerly, Rhode Island. And Jeff, I believe you said Amy will present this to the council?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Amy has this one.
Thank you. Good evening,
Yes.
Amy.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For identification, Amy Silva, Senior Supervising Environmental Scientist at CRMC. This application is before you tonight for a buffer zone variance request. In cases where an applicant requests more than 50% relief to a required buffer zone, it is a matter which must be decided by the council. As Mr. Willis mentioned earlier this evening, our new staff member, Peter O'Rourke, was the reviewing staffer on this. The applicant has done everything they can to meet the required buffer zone. It is the OWTS system that requires the relief from the buffer. If you look at the plans that are submitted in the agenda package, you can see the OWTS is tucked right up around the corner of what is a relatively small coastal wetland located across the street from the Type 2 Pawcatuck River. There's no other site on the property that could hold the OWTS, and nor would it provide more buffer zone than what is currently provided. If I remember correctly, the buffer zone will be, I believe, 51 feet in the area of the septic system, with grading up to 29 feet of the coastal feature, but that is temporary in nature. There were no staff objections to this request. As I said, it is before you because it is ineligible for administrative approval.
Any objections received? By anyone?
No, this one did not require public notice. It's a category A. Like I said, it's before you because once all was said and done and we shook out what was happening in the application, the buffer zone variance is more than 50%, so it cannot be an administrative approval.
I jumped ahead a little bit, going right to you, Amy. Is the applicant here on this one?
Yes, Mr. Chair, he's in the audience. I can bring him over.
Yeah, if we could, please. That was my mistake.
Ryan, can you bring over Mr. Gary Gustamaccio? Thank you.
What happened to my Zoom? There we go.
Is Mr. Gustamaccio over?
Yes, what-
I am here.
Okay. This is
I-
Chairman Coya. Have you had an opportunity to listen to Ms. Silva's explanation to the council?
Yes, I have. I have a counsel representing me. I don't know where he is. I assumed he was going to be here for the 6 o'clock sign-in. But
Mr.
I'm
Chair,
here.
may I interrupt? Is it Mr. Todd Romano?
yes,
I can bring him over.
Alright.
Or Ryan, maybe you can, please. There you go.
Good evening, Mr. Romano. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for letting me in.
You are welcome. Staff, in particular, Amy Silva, has addressed the council as it relates to CRMC's review and recommendation. The recommendation was no objection. Anything that you would like to add or present to the council?
I don't think I should belabor the point here, Mr. Chairman. We've submitted all the documents. We have a positive recommendation from the staff. I'm not going to step on any toes.
Any questions of Ms. Silva by council members? And we do have the applicant with council present. Are there any questions from council members for the applicant? All right. Is there anyone else, I'm going to ask this, that wishes to speak in favor of the application? Just because I don't know who might also be in our audience. Do we know, Jeff?
I do have, Mr. Chairman, I do have with me experts. I have Mr. Scott Rabideau, Paul LeBlanc, and Mr. Toscano. They don't need to be brought in.
Okay,
If any members have questions for them, they can certainly address those.
all right. Is council satisfied with the explanation and review by Ms. Silva? If so, is the council poised to make a recommendation and or motion? Mr. Gomez,
Yeah, based on the evidence presented and the recommendation and there being no objectors, I would move approval for this asset.
Mr. Gomez has moved approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Gagnon, I know I heard his voice. Moved the second. Motion been made and seconded. I will now poll the council. Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon,
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds,
Aye.
Montanaro,
Aye.
Ms. McGovern.
Aye.
I too, Raymond Coyer, vote aye. The application and the motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, and thank you, Amy, for your review and presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Have a nice night. Thank you.
You as well. Be safe.
Thank you.
Next matter on the agenda are applications which have been out to notice and are before the council for final decision. First one, 2020-11-031, Richard Carlucci and NGA LE to construct and maintain a residential boating facility consisting of a 4x34 fixed pier, 24-foot ramp, and a 10x15-foot terminal float. The facility is proposed to extend 40 feet beyond the mean low water, achieving a water depth of 18 inches. It's located at plat 201, lot 87, semicolon 153 Charlotte Drive, Warwick, Rhode Island. Is the applicant present on this one? And any representative with them, if there is one?
Mr. Chair, I'm bringing in Joel Rocha, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Joelle Rocha. I'm an attorney for the applicant tonight. I do have them in the audience as well as our experts. If we can promote them, I can list their names.
Yes, let's please do.
Sure. I have Mr. Richard Carlucci and Ms. Nali, who are the applicants. I also have with me my esteemed co-counsel, John Shikarchi. And I have John Flynn and Warren Hall.
Thank you.
Despite all that, Mr. Chair, I will be as quick as possible.
All right, first we are going to have our staff make their presentation and review. Is this Amy Silva as well?
No, Mr. Chair, this would be Ross Singer.
Ross Singer, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Ross Singer. I'm a permitting engineer here. This application is for a residential boating facility located on Greenwich Bay. This is designed as a pier, ramp and float with 2 tie-off piles extending 41 feet beyond mean level water. There are no variances required. However, an objection from an abutting property owner was received during the public comment period and this requiring to be heard tonight. The proposed project was originally for a much larger dock as well as a boat lift. Following the received objection, staff worked with the applicants to minimize this project and to remove the boat lift. However, following the revisions, the neighboring property owner maintained their objections to the project. The site itself is constrained by property line extensions which extend on an angle from shore, as well as an adjacent actively used boat ramp. The tie-off piles on the facility are located 32 feet from the property line extensions, but due to the angled lot lines, the proposed boating facility appears to be much closer to the neighboring property. That said, the proposed design is minimized to the greatest extent possible. It meets all applicable standards and there are no variances necessary. Staff has no objections to this project.
What was the objection? And I can hear from them, but your understanding as to what the objection was.
I think at first the size of the facility was quite large, and it was due to the angled lot lines. The facility appears to be much closer to their property than from the lot lines. So they have a much smaller frontage along their property. Their worries, I believe, were besides visual, just interfering with the riparian rights, water usage, et cetera.
Thank you. Attorney Rocha, I'd ask that you present, but maybe give some focus on evidence that you have as it relates to the objections as well.
That's my plan, Mr. Chair. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Please.
So, thank you. While you've got probably a lot of paper before you on this application, as Mr. Singer stated, we've been through several iterations of this and hopefully have presented a pared down application, which requires, like you said, no variances. We do want to thank staff for working with us through this process as this application came in November of 2020. The staff report on this really covers all the bases, but I will cover a few of the important notes. And as Mr. Chair said, as it relates to what we understand the objections are. In kind of the last ditch attempt to appease the abutter, we have the plan before you, which is shortened, it's moved over and shifted over. As Mr. Singer stated, we are constrained to the right because of the public right of way, as that's shown on our plan. It is my understanding that the abutter still wants us to move towards that direction, but because of the setback over there, we're unable to do that. I do have Mr. Hall here to just go through that plan with you very, very briefly. The first issue that came up with the abutter was some stairs that are located near the property. If I can share my screen, I will bring that up. It's been a while, so bear with me. Okay. So this is the plan you have before you that Mr. Hall did, who's here tonight. These are the stairs at issue. There has been a claim that this abutter, Mr. King, has some ownership rights into the stairs. I understand that is not before the CRMC tonight or really at all, but I do want to address that really quickly because I think for reasons I'm going to get into right now with our surveyor, it's really neither here nor there. So if you'll note, these stairs are located just about where the property line is between the two properties. I'm going to switch over to our survey, which is also in the file. And then Mr. Flynn is here, I believe. Mr. Flynn? Did we get him in? Yes. Jim, are you there? You have to unmute.
Ms. Rocha, if you're gonna ask him questions, then I'll need to have our
Where?
counsel swear him in, please.
Understood. He's muted, so.
I guess he's not in like Flynn.
No. Did we lose him?
His picture's there.
Oh, there he is. Jim, can you unmute? No.
Spacebar.
All right. While he's figuring that out, we'll turn over. Mr. Hall, can you unmute to be sworn in?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Hall, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Warren Hall, WARRENHALL.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Warren, could you just explain the site plan very briefly? That's before the board tonight and the site constraints that led us here.
Certainly. So I used information that was provided to me by Jim Flynn, the land surveyor. He did a class 1 comprehensive boundary survey on the property. And you can see the 4 corners of the property are monumented with rebars on the east side along Robert Ave, rebar to a nail on Charlotte Drive, and then heading down in between the Parati lot and the Colucci lot here. There's a drill hole. So I surveyed those 4 points, and that's how I came up with my lot lines. And they're designated with an AL, assessors lot line. Now, by projecting the lot line through the drill hole out over the water, you can see where it's labeled ALE, assessors lot line extension. And that's where we begin our dimensions to the pier and to the proposed structures. So the pier itself is located 25 feet east of the existing stairs. And it's also somewhat parallel with the stairs. And basically it's 4 feet wide. It extends out approximately 72 feet from the face of the existing wall. It terminates with a 150 square foot float. And it has a ramp to get down to that float from the fixed pier. Provides 5 feet of clearance between mean high water and the stringer. And on the other side, on the Robert Avenue side, the easterly side of the pier, we also maintain 25 feet off of that lot line extension. You can see the dashed line heading out over the water with the 25-foot dimension there. Other than that, we do have an area, a small groin that was installed way back in the 80s. Part of this application, part of the plan shown here is to remove and dispose that groin. That was part of our discussions with the staff. I think that covers it.
And Mr. Hall, just one thing briefly. You stated that you copied the markers that were on the Flynn survey, correct?
Yes,
And that included, does that include this FND drill hole?
yes,
Okay, and does that FND drill hole mean that's the northern property boundary of that, of the lot 87?
it does. FND stands for found drill hole.
Great. And the existing steps noted on your plan are north of that, correct?
Correct.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair, from Mr. Hall. If the board has any questions.
Any members from the council have questions of Mr. Hall? I don't see any. All right, please proceed.
Great, thank you. So that was one of the primary objections, was these stairs. They are located on neither property line of the direct abutter or our property line. They are in significant disrepair. We have alerted CRMC to that issue, and we've placed no trespassing signs on them out of an abundance of caution, because there is a claim that they are on our property, which we believe from the survey is not the case. In any event, Mr. King has expressed objections based on interference with his view and his riparian rights. As noted in the staff memorandum, the ability of Mr. King to even have a residential dock at his property is significantly limited, even without our proposed dock here, due to the site conditions, and he would need a number of variances. Moreover, as this board, I'm sure, is well aware, as is your council, no one has a right to a dock. We have to petition and file an application to this body, whether it's before you formally or administratively, and we're required to apply and ask for permission. I apologize for the technical difficulties from our surveyor, but I think you get the point from Mr. Hall, who's a professional engineer as well. I do have my clients here too, if there are any questions of us.
Any questions of the applicants by council members? Anything else at this time? Attorney Rocha?
No, thank you.
Okay. Is the objector in?
Mr. Chairman, the objector is in the attendee list and has his hand raised.
All right, can we bring them over?
he's over, Mr. Chair. His name is Jim King.
Okay. Hello, Mr. King.
Hi, thank you.
Mr. King, you've heard the presentation by counsel for the applicants and a discussion from our staff indicating that you had filed an objection as it relates to the matter before us. So why don't you present to our counsel your objection? And Tony, do we need to swear him in?
In this instance, yes.
Okay. Mr. King, I'm gonna have staff counsel, counsel swear you in.
Please raise your right hand, which you've already done. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Please state your name and spell it for the record.
James King, Jameskiing, son of the owners, current owners of 161 Charlotte.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. I will say that a lot of the information that was just described to you is accurate as presented, and it's been nice from the initial dock design in December of 2020 until now that there have been some changes made to the size, the scope, the placement of it, and I believe it has been getting fairly close to what would be satisfactory to all parties. I will say that I do think there is still room for improvement, and not all options have been exhausted to make it fair for the impact it has on my parents and at 161. Specifically, the hindrances that 153 has to deal with as a result of being next to the boat ramp are putting some pressure on what we believe our rights to be in front of the property at 161. So, I mean, I could share my screen. It would be more or less a copy of what was just presented. And I think it would be helpful only because, you know, the architectural drawing is one thing, but if you see the impact to the waterfront access that we would have and access back to land from the water, you know, and when you consider the placement of the dock, the placement of the tie-down piles, and assume there'll be a boat floating there, I think you would agree very clearly that it is extremely invasive and cuts off access, the ability to enjoy, the ability to use the water as we have done for so long. And, you know, I could go through that with you. Furthermore, and what I think needs to be explained, although I know very clearly that it's not exactly the main concern of the CRMC, is that tiny triangle of area where the steps are. There is an active and filed adverse possession claim in Superior Court for the boundary line as presented by the owner at 153 and what we believe the boundary line to be. My family has had that place since the 1950s, before there was even a house at 153. And I mean, I would be willing to guess that some of the modifications that have been made from the initial dock design into where we are now are a result of 153 realizing that, you know, the property space there is certainly questionable in what they're describing to be the, I would say their proposal far beyond, you know, what they own, and, you know, any relief granted to them out into the waterfront that immediately impacts the rights of 161, I think truly have to be fully considered by the board, and I know that it will be. And, you know, one more point I think I'd like to make, there was some correspondence between my parents' lawyers and the lawyers from 153 that has been productive lately. I think so. And, you know, we're looking for a harmonious outcome here where, you know, a dock is available to 153 that they're happy with, that also preserves the rights at 161. I don't think this dock as proposed is there, most specifically because of the tie-down piles and a boat being directly in front of where we enjoy the water. The fourth generation of kids are from age 6 to 12, you know, that are in there all the time. I believe there's to be safety issues, and I'd be glad to show my screen. I'm not sure if it's really necessary. I think it would help in one capacity so you get a better idea than just to look at the sketch. That would probably be the last thing, and then you could probably, you know, give me some questions if you have any. There was one last, I don't want to say counter offer because I don't think it needs to be, you know, aggressive in nature, that was made today from my parents and their lawyer to
Mr. Chair, I would just object to any of that discussion going on.
Are you done?
I just think it was a statement saying that something was made. I'm not going to get into what was said, just the fact that a representation from this gentleman that something was said today. But Mr. King, if you do want to show your screen as part of your presentation, I will allow that.
Yeah, let me see if I can do that. I haven't done Zoom in a while myself. Share screen. Is everyone seeing my screen right now?
Yes.
It's a top view Google Map photograph of the area that we're talking about. Everybody see that?
I can see it.
Okay. So those two red lines are estimations of exactly what was presented to you earlier. I would say it's very accurate as to what you've seen before. That green line right there is what we believe to be the waterfront property boundary line between 153 and 161. That being the case, you know, a lot of what is being proposed to you by 153 is overreaching, and we have this thing in Superior Court as an adverse possession claim to show this. What you see right there existed before 153 even had a home on it. And in both scenarios, the seawall is beyond the actual property boundary. So I just wanted to show you that one thing quickly. Moving down, here it is. Here it is, so you can see. So those steps have been there since the 80s. Before the 80s, there was cement, and that goes all the way back to the 1950s. This is exactly what it looks like right now. That's what it looks like today. That's been the water access point for my family since the 1950s. It was not until December of 2020 when the engineer put the survey plans in for the dock at 153 that red line was ever known to be, including the previous owners who we had discussed this with. And then lastly, if that green line extension was to happen as a result of an adverse possession claim victory by 161 in Superior Court, which we are very, very confident in and will pursue if needed. We don't want to pursue it, by the way. We would like to get to a reasonable outcome for all involved. That would be the property line boundary that they would need to have 25 feet variance from in our direction. So I'm not saying we're looking entirely for that. I'd rather just get to a reasonable outcome between my family and the family at 153 harmoniously. But I just wanted you to see what you're looking at, you know, not in the draft form. So this is truly what it does look like, and what you're seeing there cannot be contested. It has been like that and used like that for 60 plus years. And that boat lift or that boat tie down piles on this picture is happening directly in front of that structure, directly where my family uses the property, directly where the kids swim, directly where a boat comes in and out. And I just believe it to be more invasive than you are being told or can see from that original draft and explanation a moment ago. One last thing I do want to say, regardless of the previous objection, the item sent today was almost exactly a copy of a draft proposal that was already sent to you, the first revised draft. Essentially, with a tiny modification, my parents would agree to that, write a letter of no objection, and it would be a doc that I believe 153 would be happy with, that they have already submitted to you. It's different in that there's nothing directly in the way of these steps, in the way of our waterfront access, impairing our future ability to have a dock or have stairs. And they have already proposed it. So I don't see why that cannot be looked at again. I believe it to be a far superior outcome for everybody involved. Outside of that, I will stop sharing my screen. I could share a million things with you, but I wanted you to see exactly what it looks like in picture form.
Any questions of Mr. King from council members? Attorney Rocha, any questions of Mr. King?
No, just I'll have a brief rebuttal, but I don't have any questions.
Anything else, Mr. King?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right. Before I go back to Attorney Rocha, anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak in opposition of this? Anyone identifying Jeff or Ryan?
No, no, Mr. Chair, there are no hands raised.
Okay. Attorney Rocha, please.
Thank you. Just so the record's clear here, we've modified this plan several times, and the initial revisions were to, to address some comments by staff and address the abutting property owner's objection, where we shifted, we reduced the size of the facility and we shifted the facility over. Just to be clear, what was proposed on the eve of this hearing requires variances and the like. We are here with an application that doesn't require any variances. What I would also add, and what we were getting at, just to show again, is this issue about the adverse possession case. Just to give you one last look, and then I will finish, is these stairs are actually past the property line. Public trust doctrine means it's owned by the state in trust. So that adverse possession claim can't be brought against the state as a matter of law. So while this isn't the court going to hear that, our survey shows it's beyond the property lines of either property. So I don't think that's a consideration for this application. In any event, as staff has stated in their report, we've complied with all of the regulations, don't seek any variances, and would just request that the board vote to approve our permit.
Are the property lines that are depicted on your diagram fair and accurate representation of what is on record at the present time?
Yes, so this is the class 1 survey with the drill hole. That those stairs are about here where the break for the concrete seawall is. This is based on the plat map, which is also attached to your to the initial application from November. The plat map was attached, and the survey is based on that recorded plat map. All that's referenced in these deeds for the properties are lot numbers from an old 1920 plan. So from that plan, it cuts off where the beach was, and then subsequently these seawalls and stairs were built past that property line.
Okay. Anything else?
No, thank you. Unless there are any questions.
Any questions from council members? Of anyone? Mr. Singer, anything you'd like to add after hearing all of the evidence or testimony? Has anything changed your opinion?
I have nothing new to add.
All right. Having received all of the evidence and testimony coming before the council, is the council in a position to make a motion as it relates to this application?
Just one quick question for our council.
Please.
Should this adverse possession case have any influence? Does it have any issue with us voting or anything if we vote to approve it, but the adverse possession case goes forward and 161 is wins? Does that change how the application is reviewed, or does it require anything after that?
Well, here's the situation for this, for this council for tonight. Under section 8-12 13 of the general laws, only the Superior Court is vested with determining interest in property, including lot lines. That's not something that this council can undertake. Now, I take Mr. King at his word that an adverse possession case has been filed in this matter properly in Superior Court. Unfortunately, tonight, for the application that you have, it's the current lot line that controls here. When an adverse possession case is filed, the adverse possessor does not gain title to the land. That only happens when the Superior Court enters judgment to the effect that the adverse possessor has title to the land that is claimed. So that's not something that can be considered tonight by you. It may, the case may march forward and they may win. I don't know. But for tonight, for this application, that's not something that you can consider because you don't have jurisdiction by statute to do that. This reminds me of a case that the CRMC was involved with, Periwinkle Realty versus Karen Sue, which was settled about 18 months ago. That's CA number 2010-0646. It involved similar issues as to where the riparian lot lines were for an angle on this. And that matter proceeded to court on it. But tonight, you have the plans before you. You don't have the ability to make a determination as to whether or not the adverse possession claim is effective and therefore changes the lot lines, if it does at all. I understand what Ms. Roach is saying. I know that she's relying on the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce case on this as to filled lands, or I should say lands that are under the public trust doctrine. I'm sorry. But for tonight, you have the plans before you, and that's what you need to make a determination on.
Ron, that's why I asked the question, does the depiction on her diagram fairly and accurately represent what's in existence right now? I mean, to Anthony's point, anything else is speculative as it relates to decisions on adverse possession.
Okay. Thank you. Think that explanation helps. Thank you.
All right, is anyone poised to make a motion on this application? Mr. Gomez?
Yes, we had, I guess it was back in December, we had significant discussion on this application, and it appears that the result of that discussion was the modifications presented tonight. And in my opinion, they very much met what we discussed at that point. I'm fairly happy with what I see, and I'm glad that they were able to make those. So I would approve the assent. I would approve this application for passage.
Motion has been made by Mr. Gomez. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Reynolds.
Ms. Reynolds has seconded the motion. So motion has been made and seconded to approve the application as presented. I will now poll the council as to their vote. Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon,
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds,
Aye.
Ms. Montanaro,
Aye.
Ms. McGovern.
Aye.
I too vote aye, so it passes unanimously. Thank you, council, and Mr. King for presenting this evening.
Thank you very much.
All right, good luck. Be safe. Thank you. Next matter is Town of South Kingston. That's 2021-10-062. It's the Town of South Kingston. It's an application to remove and replace the boat ramp and adjacent floating dock at the Marina Boat Launching Facility. The ramp will be the same width. The rebuilt ramp will have a slightly steeper slope and include a new 4-foot runoff slab and a 10-foot stone apron. The new ramp will be constructed using interlocking concrete panels installed on an engineered stone sub base. The existing floating dock will be replaced with an ADA aluminum gangway with a 2 to 6 foot wide by 20 foot long floats, which will be 11 feet longer than the existing floats. The proposal contains 2 new floats that are 6 feet wide and 20 feet long, each installed perpendicular to the main float. It's located at plat 64-4, lot 11, semicolon, 218 Salt Pond Road, South Kingston, Rhode Island. Is the applicant present on that? And if so, can we let them in?
Hey, good evening.
Good evening. Could you identify yourself?
Yes, Michael Stack, Town of South Kingstown, Harbor Master and Natural Resource Officer.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Jeff, who's
May
got
I-
this one?
Mr. Goulet.
Dan Goulet. Good evening. Could you please present?
Danny, you're muted.
Oops. Thank you, Mr.
Evening,
Chair. This project is a total removal and reconstruction of existing town-owned boat ramp. The new ramp will meet the Red Book design standards and solve some long-standing scour problems at the facility. Even though the new facility will be approximately 20 feet longer, the removal of the old ramp and sub-base material versus the new work will result in a facility that has approximately 70 cubic yards less fill in Point Judith Pond. All of the ramp work will be done within the confines of a temporary cofferdam, which will allow the work to be done in the dry and eliminate turbidity in the water. The excess material will be disposed of off-site at the Lynn, Massachusetts landfill. The existing facility has adjacent floating docks that will be replaced and expanded to allow more vessels to use the ramp at the same time. Rather than extending further out into the pond, creating navigation issues, the proponent will add 2 floats perpendicular to the replacement float. These new floats will be in front of the town's property and will not need an abutter sign off. It's the opinion of the staff that the facility was designed in accordance with the Red Book standards and that the material submitted meets the requirements for a Category B application. The project has already received its Rhode Island DEM water quality certificate. Staff recommends approval with the standard stipulations and the additional stipulation at the end of the engineering report concerning offsite and out-of-state material disposal. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Mr. Goulet by council members? Seeing none. All right, Mr. Stack, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Let me just ask, Jeff, any objectors on this?
There are none objectors. No one objected to the application, Mr. Chair.
All right. So we have before us an application that's been explained by Mr. Goulet and presented with a recommendation of approval. Anything that you would like to add, Mr. Stack?
I would like to add the town's engineering firm is also in attendance, I believe. They may have some more information.
It should be Igor, Jeff, right? I thought I saw him earlier.
And
Yeah, he's
possibly
in the,
Rebecca.
yeah, Igor Runge is in the attendees list.
Do you plan to have him testify?
Yes. Yeah, he can speak on behalf of the town.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Igor. Tony, do you need to swear him in?
Absolutely. Every time Igor comes before us, we got to swear that guy in.
No
Igor, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
First name's Igor, I-G-O-R. Last name is Runge, R-U-N-G-E.
Good evening, Mr. Runge. You've heard the presentation of the application by Mr. Goulet with a recommendation of approval. Is there anything that you would like to add to your application other than what's been presented?
I think Mr. Goulet made an excellent job of presenting our situation. And again, it's an existing public ramp and pier. It's old and it needs a lot of work. It's in very poor shape. I personally have used it a number of times. Many people have used it. It's very popular and it's definitely seen better days. With the improvements that we propose, it'll make a big difference when it's completed. And again, it's in the type 3 waters, so this type of activity is promoted in that area. And the new dock will be a little bit longer. It'll be a little steeper, but all within the guidelines. And we're hoping that these additions will eliminate or at least reduce the amount of scouring that now occurs on the short ramp every time a boat's taken out. And the boat owner, I guess, really pours the throttle on the boat to get it onto the trailer. And I understand there have been no objectors. And again, it's been a great public area, and we hope to continue doing that in the future with this new ramp and the new dock.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Runge by council members? Anything else, Mr. Stack?
No, sir. I believe both Mr. Goulet and Mr. Runge have outlined very well the goal of the town and the asset that the replacement would provide to users.
All right. To the council, the applicant has concluded their presentation. Are there any questions at this point from council members of Mr. Goulet or the applicant or Mr. Runge? And the applicant meaning Mr. Stack for this evening. Any questions? All right. Is the council poised to make a motion on this application based on the presentation of the material and evidence?
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the application as presented.
Mr. Gagnon has moved approval. Is there a second?
Reynolds seconds.
Ms. Reynolds has seconded it. I will now poll the council. Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon,
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds,
Aye.
Ms. Montanaro,
Aye.
Ms. McGovern.
Aye.
I too, Raymond Coyer, vote aye. So the motion to approve is passed unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen, and good luck.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the formal agenda. Tony or Jeff, anything else that needs to be addressed?
No, nothing here, Mr. Chair. No administrative issues to date.
No legal issues either.
We are poised to adjourn then?
Yes.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Come on.
I'll make a motion.
Motion been made, seconded by Ms. McGovern. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Aye.